Alright, I received a email from Monroe, from NIC, really, the inspection authority down there, and as I suspected, they are going to give us a headache about connecting to that brick veneer. Even though that's a really light load, they're going to give us a headache about it, as I had anticipated they might. Question number 2 is nothingness, because yes, it exists. And while a hip roof, as I had shown earlier, does eliminate some of that attachment to the brick, it does not eliminate all of it, and in particular it doesn't eliminate any of the weight of those box beams that were carrying those false cladded beams down below. Those were also attached to the brick, and we have been through what it looked like having additional columns at the south end up toward the house, going with 4 columns or 6 or 7 or whatever the various permutations we went through. So there were 2 alternatives, and I designed an alternative that will not have any load on that brick and not have exterior columns at the south, just staying with the 2 7.5-inch column plan that we've been showing. This solution, however, is going to be more intensive because it requires adding beams going north and south and providing support for those beams on the left side, on the east side. I don't see a way you get around it without penetrating the wall and installing blocking to support these 2 2x8s that are to be added heading back south. On this side here, these 2 2x8s come in. You have to remove 8 inches of brick down through here in height-wise, and maybe there is enough blocking already in place that you can fasten a concealed flange hanger through that sheeting to that, but that is a guess at best. And so if that's done, after those 2 beams, beam C and beam B, are added in, penetrating this wall and penetrating this wall, somehow being supported down through here, then on top of that you have to add 2 more 2x8s for beam D to support these rafters going through, and then that leaves these 2 end rafters that we can't support on the brick either, this one and that one. And so this is what this solution looks like outside, framed up. And while I'm not really suggesting a person do this unless they were intending to paint these rooms inside, because there is going to be disturbance at the drywall inside these rooms, this entry hall and whatever this room is here. But I did want to explain the solution without using columns back here. On this right side, you have to remove that layer of veneer for 3 courses or whatever it takes to get these 2 new 2x8s in here. And I have just had these different colors so that you can see what is going on. These are all just regular lumber here. You can't contact the brick, but it's just regular lumber. But this one's going all the way back and hoping to use a concealed connector with screws through the sheeting and into hoped for framing, which will have to be confirmed prior to that. We don't know if that framing is going to be in place there. On this side we can almost be sure that the framing will not be in place, and you have to pull out enough bricks to have these penetrate that wall so that you can put a leg down to the foundation. So that is how beam B and beam C are supported. Beam D is this one back here at the back, and it is sitting on top of beam B and beam C, which means some of that brick on the beam C side, on that west side, above that, needs removed for that beam D to penetrate that and sit on top of beam C. And by the way, beam C and beam B are attached to this beam A at the west or at the north end with hangers. And then beam D, which carries these rafters. And I have these rafters now, it's just all one piece rafter, and these just are ripped rafters that are 2x8s that are ripped with a 2-degree bevel on top. So there's just one member that does the ceiling joist and the rafter, and those are in 24 inches on center. So the thing has become fairly simple to frame, besides that part that has to penetrate the house. And then, as I mentioned, there were the two fly rafters. So this fly rafter here, this is your typical lookout framing, and I actually have a little strong back on that as well, coming out to hold that end rafter there. And on this end here, you are just going to notch beam D down 3.5, because these really only have to be 2x4s up here. So you're going to notch beam D down 3.5 inches to carry this last fly rafter, and that cantilever is also carried by that. And this last little piece here is just sitting down on beam B below. So that gives them the solution they're looking for, and they will pass this, but that is a lot of extra work going back in here. And the alternative was having some columns that didn't look too good out here. So the second, which, those columns out there, that would be the third alternative. So if we call this the first and that's the third, the second alternative is I would like to see if, in spite of that being not according to code, or not, they can't pass it with me saying it. They can't pass the already submitted plans because it's not in conformance with their written code. But anyone who's a professional architect or an engineer can, assess the thing and overcome that. It's my belief. And so I am running these by, because it's so much less expensive, I'm running these by an engineer. Not these ones, because these don't need run by an engineer, but the original plans that have been rejected by NIC. I'm going to run those by an engineer, and I already know what the cost is for him to assess those, and if he thinks they will do it, stamp them. And we will be done with it as soon as NIC sees the stamp, and then that is over. They won't even review the plans. They'll say they're fine. So I will be in touch very shortly with regard to that. In the event that the engineer, for whatever reason, says no, NIC's right, I can't do this either, then our solutions are this, or one with south columns, which I would have to design also. You would still have these beams here, obviously. You would still have beam D here. The only difference is you wouldn't penetrate this house here. You wouldn't need to remove this brick here either. You wouldn't need to remove any brick at all. So, but as I said, I think the engineering solution is going to be a lot less rigmarole and expense. So thanks very much, and I will talk to you as soon as I hear back from him.